Coming to a top university like Notre Dame can be quite intimidating, as you find yourself suddenly amongst a sea of very bright, talented people who have often had to jump through many hoops, including a selective and rigorous admissions process to get here. Students normally feel a lot of pressure to live up to very high expectations from themselves and others, and to measure up to their peers. It is easy to experience what is called the imposter syndrome, where you may think that being admitted here is just a fluke. You may worry that you somehow fooled us and sooner or later you'll be revealed to be a fraud who doesn't really belong. Believe it or not, the imposter syndrome is practically a universal experience. Human beings are deeply social animals, who are ever mindful of their place in the social order and wary of doing things that might result in being alienated, as it wasn't that long ago in our evolutionary history that getting kicked out of the herd meant certain death. However, at the same time, our survival also depended on developing close relationships and having a sense of belonging based on knowing each other more fully, including our flaws, imperfections, and differences. This is fundamental to good health and well-being. These close relationships provide mutual support for the stresses and problems of everyday life, both big and small. In trusting relationships where we feel accepted as we are, we don't have to waste valuable time and energy protecting ourselves. However, deeper connection requires vulnerability. Far from being weak, vulnerability means having the courage to trust someone else and risking judgment or rejection in order to reveal yourself more fully. We never really feel a sense of genuine belonging or really feel at home without letting our guard down, at least to some, and experiencing acceptance based on who we are, flaws, imperfections, and all. Without this, we experience the chronic stress of carrying a heavy protective shield and mask, and often wonder whether others would still accept us if they really knew us. This can be exhausting. In our modern environment, social media and advertisers perpetuate this problem by promoting misleading images of how others are doing, the parties you weren't invited to, and how life is supposed to be. How many times have you heard that college is supposed to be the happiest time in your life, or thought that everyone else seems to have it together? We can get a very distorted perception of how we're doing relative to others when comparing our inner struggles to others' facades that often present as happy, confident, successful, and connected. And in order to keep up, we might overcommit and overwork ourselves trying to do everything and sacrificing important things like sleep. Or conversely, we might procrastinate and avoid because it all seems so overwhelming. What we don't see are the uncertainties, insecurities, struggles, differences, and painful feelings that are a normal part of life. We've observed that students are often afraid to let their guards down, to ask for help from each other, and to talk about these deeper issues. It's much safer to keep things superficial with conversations that emphasize the positive and fun experiences, or things we appear to have in common, like partying and football. Too often, students are afraid to make mistakes, to say the wrong thing, or to reveal what they don't know, as if these things aren't simply normal parts of learning and growing. However, superficial interactions can quickly become stale and unfulfilling, and make talking about our differences and struggles seem unwelcome and potentially alienating. And so, these misleading facades make more authentic relating very daunting, keeping us stuck in relentless social comparisons and making it hard to really get to know one another. To this point, college-age students are experiencing an epidemic of loneliness, with nearly half of all college students reporting experiencing loneliness. This is a major factor driving growing college mental health problems. As you can see here, recent data from the Healthy Mind study, large numbers of college students are struggling with depression and anxiety, such that unfortunately, it's practically normal. It also shows that far more students are struggling than are actually seeking help. There is an abundant but often overlooked and underutilized resource on our campus that is key to our health and well-being. That is, each other. Unfortunately, help seeking has somehow been stigmatized as weak, which is simply absurd. We are social animals whose evolutionary success depended upon helping and protecting each other, harnessing our diversity of characteristics and strengths, and sharing resources for the common good. There were no ruggedly individualistic cavemen or cavewomen who survived to pass on their genes. Further, giving help is naturally something we feel good about and are motivated to do. We wouldn't have been as successful as a species if this were not the case. Nonetheless, it is common to worry that we'll burden others if we open up about our problems. To the contrary, The typical reaction when someone turns to us for help is to feel honored that the other person would trust us, to feel closer to that person, and to feel safer opening up to them. We don't expect you to be each other's personal counselors or have solutions and advice. We all have limits, and we also have to take care of ourselves. However, simply being a caring presence for each other's pain and hardships and being willing to listen without judgment can go a long way toward helping each other and building community. There simply aren't enough counselors in the world to substitute for the deeper caring connections and community we need to develop with one another. And so, taking care of your health and well-being means investing time and energy towards this. We hope to empower you to develop deeper connections with one another, characterized by curiosity, humility, openness, and compassion, where we can allow plenty of room for ignorance, imperfections, and mistakes as a normal part of learning and growing, and where we welcome and are enriched by our differences as well as our similarities. After all, did you come to a world-class university like Notre Dame to form relationships only with those with whom you have things in common?